hopefully you can all see my screen. So yes, I'm going to take you through a slightly different approach and talk through how do you go from inception to design to operationalization, and also measuring that success as well. So I'm conscious of time, so I jump straight in. So the 3 steps that I'm going to go through is around the qualitative analysis and building taxonomies. So the sort of point of inception, where to begin when designing conversational bots, and using the voice of the customer as your barometer, and then going through the bot dialogue builds and the iterative cycle process, so conversational design models and ongoing optimization, and then also how to measure the success. So a slightly different interpretation of success metrics, and also the sort of future potential there. So what KPIs to focus on to ensure the strength of the solution is that's required, and then moving in the right direction as well. So moving us from inception to design. So where to begin? So in order to target key topics driving consumer pain points, there's a number of options such as voice and text analytics, utilizing sentiment data, survey verbatim, site behaviors such as time on page, which is one of my favorites, or points of abandonment, things like bounce rate. It gives you the ability to then go ahead and build a library of taxonomies based on these points, and this is essentially your area of opportunity. Once you have this catalogue of taxonomies, you can go ahead and build a complexity scale, and I'll share a really basic example of how simplistic this can be to help you to then hyper focus on not only the areas of possibility, but also the scale of that impact as well, which is absolutely critical when, in particular, when you are starting off. The next step is to train the NLU to accurately extract the context and the intent that we're focusing on. Each solution or provider you use will have different levels of required data ingestion to reach the necessary levels of significance for an accurate match rate. And once this is done, we can then design the dialogue flows to essentially accelerate the path to resolution. Really simple as that. I'm just at this point just going to take a step back in the ideation process and cover what I mentioned earlier on, which is the complexity matrix. So this is how we approach it from our side. This is a really simplistic example of it, but using a basic 4-box chart, we can quickly identify the intent to target. This is modeled using low sentiment customer satisfaction surveys and NPS analysis. And an example of low complexity and high reward is things like proposition recommendations or offer recommendations for both new and existing customers. So prospects and upselling to and cross-selling to your existing base. Easy due to the fact that you can build a basic needs-based algorithm to surface a recommendation. This then has a conversion and actually in some cases an ARPU uplift. So a low complexity and high reward intent. So this is a type of intent that we focused on early on in our journey. But then on the opposite end of the scale, you've got things like retentions based conversations. Although the benefit of successfully delivering the solution is high due to the impact on CLV, customer lifetime value, the complexity is also astronomically high, as are emotive factors to be considered, and therefore the tonality of the conversation will be a high risk factor. And in some businesses, the complexity of the bundle build needs to be considered, as well as the associated APIs to deliver this type of solution. So although there's high reward, there's high complexity, and in some businesses that we've seen examples of recently, there's also high risk involved with this as well. So I think it's important to pull this type of view together during the inception phase of this whole process. So this type of approach will help you to hyper focus on the intents and their associated meta intents as well, which is always a factor to consider, and allow you to move forward to your dialogue building. When it comes to this part of the process, there are 3 principles that we adhere to. Be efficient, so focus on simple solutions to decrease the bot handling time. I'm a fan of saying just because we can doesn't mean we should. So keep it simple and take into account both the digital and non-digital natives so that you are covering as wide a spectrum as possible. Be effective. So instead of creating unconscious friction points, always move the conversation forward with progressive questions. This way, the bot controls the pace and the progress, avoiding conversational loops and ensuring effectiveness is as high as possible. We want the consumer to feel a constant sense of progress, and focusing on progressive questioning and the general language that you're using can help you to achieve this. And finally, and this has been mentioned a bit earlier on, but agility is absolutely key. So in the event that progress does stagnate, be prepared to pivot. So the new bots we're currently designing have a 3-tier model. So the first is the NLU intent recognition, which we've been talking about. So pure reliance on the natural language understanding, using the bot intelligence to identify the user's intent and then find a resolution, to quote unquote the happy path, if you like. So that's tier 1. Tier 2 is the intent recognition through structured content. So you can use solutions such as on-site or in-app CTAs or buttons to things like drop-down lists to then influence the progress of the conversation and ensure that there is a seamless movement by integrating these different solutions into your chatbots. So when we're at this point, we're essentially moving away from relying on the NLP to a far more pattern matching sequencing solution. So more of a structured, automated approach as an alternative to pure reliance on the NLU. And then finally, escalating to a human contact through the customer's channel of choice, whether that's messaging, WhatsApp voice, for example. And again, in-app solutions are great for this point of escalation. And it also gives you a great data point as well, so you can measure, which I'll talk about in a second. But once all of this is established, then you're in a sort of optimal space to deploy. So the final steps is really, how do we measure the success of our chatbot solutions, which is the interesting space that we're in at the moment. So our approach is slightly different to what you might hear elsewhere. So we focused on continuance, containment, and ease. So continuance is the percentage of customers that have moved from one node or one question to the next. So for example, if your question is, can I take your name, please? You see that you lose 5% of your customers here. Then your continuance score for that step is 95%. This then gives you a clear focal point for optimization. We found this very, very useful. Contained by design. So this is the percentage of users that have reached a designed endpoint within the chatbot. There's a lot of talk within our industry around contained solutions, but I don't think there's enough focus on whether that is contained by design, and it essentially excludes users who have abandoned the conversation or encountered a loop in the flow. This gives you an idea of which intents are delivering an effective point of resolution and which intents require a degree of again optimization to go ahead and increase that percentage. And then never to forget the sort of simplistic side of things, which is the single ease survey. So these are our customer facing surveys to measure the ease of the process, which can then be mapped back to each dialogue flow, to each node even, and allow you to identify any points of friction to iterate on. So measuring all of the above can give you the required levels of confidence that the experience is as impactful as expected, and if not, there's a very clear steer on where to begin the iterative cycle, or even just the basic debugging, if you like. So the final point that I'd like to cover is really, what does the future look like in the conversational commerce space, and this is one that I seriously enjoy covering. So the consumer-facing side of things, I spoke earlier about the complexity matrix that we work off, and there are particular segments in that matrix that we simply steer clear of it at this point in our tenure. But the levels of complex intent resolution can be improved with the evolution of APIs and CRM platforms. Salesforce was mentioned earlier, which is a solution that we are using to improve the intelligence really and the quality of the conversation of our bots, and therefore we then have the ability to increase the complexity of the conversation as the intelligence scales at the same rates, and therefore the effectiveness. I think that's the simplistic side of it, but there's for us, one of the key areas or the two key areas that we're focusing on at this point in time, I think Google CC AI was mentioned earlier on as well, but the agent facing and operational training side of things means that you can drive cost efficiencies, you can drive customer experience and KPI performance through improving the competency levels of your human agents. So you're simply, instead of this, sometimes it feels like a bit of a primary focus of replacing human agents. You can augment your human agents with chatbots and achieving this sense of synergy between the two. It doesn't need to be either or. We can achieve a sense of symbiotic solution, a tango, if you like, which gives you the ability to maintain the human emotional intelligence that they bring to the table with the efficiencies and consistency of the conversational AI. And I think that that is one of the solutions that is going to help us to evolve our project to the next level, because it means that we can tackle that that quartile of complex solutions with this hybrid solution of human agents with bot agents. It also means that we can be confident that the compliance side of the conversation is delivered as necessary, because you can simply at that point provide a handoff to a chatbot solution, which will then deliver a consistent and compliant script to the customer in those types of scenarios. So yeah, so just food for thought. This additional idea of augmenting human agents is definitely what we're trying to optimize this year, and see what benefits that can bring in regards to not only improving the overall customer experience, but also really accelerating the cost efficiencies associated with our projects. And that is everything that I wanted to cover. Hopefully I bring some time back in, but yes, thanks for listening.